So the New York Times releases a partial tax return of Donald Trump from 1995, showing a declared net loss of $916 million, which conceivably could have given him a tax write-off for the next 20 years. What a shocker. Businessman exploits the tax laws as if we didn't know that that happens every day of the year. That's how business functions. If you don't like the tax laws, change them. But those laws are there, and they are exploited every year. He didn't do anything illegal. He declared a loss, which was a valid loss. The law allowed him to do that. If there was anything illegal in it, he would have gone to jail. The fact that this is 20-year-old information and he's never been indicted for it is ridiculous to even be discussing it, except that on the surface, it makes it seem like he doesn't pay his fair share. This guy didn't pay any taxes in 1995, may not have paid taxes for a few years following, and you have to pay taxes. This was all the result of failed casinos in Atlantic City. And they would like you to believe that this really points to Donald Trump not being a good businessman. But they don't tell you that he's not the only one who failed in Atlantic City. A lot of casinos failed in Atlantic City. And a lot of those companies did not bounce back the way Trump's businesses bounced back. It is a testament to how intelligent he is. It is. They're criticizing Giuliani for saying that Trump is a genius for exploiting the tax laws. He is, because many other companies would have gone under and not recovered. He was able to capitalize on that and rebound from it and grow. They also don't want to tell you that Atlantic City is pretty much a failed city. You know, they brought casino gambling to Atlantic City back in the 70s, thinking that it was going to revitalize the city and make it the Las Vegas of the East. And it never really did pan out for them the way that they planned it to. And a lot of casinos failed there. Nobody wants to talk about any of the other failed ventures in Atlantic City. It's only interesting because Donald Trump failed there. Even with those failed casinos and his handful of bankruptcies, he still has a 98% success rate with his other companies. It's something that the media doesn't want to talk about at all. There's really nothing newsworthy in that. Hillary Clinton used the same tax laws that Donald Trump used to roll over losses. Maybe not in the hundreds of millions like he did, but she used the same law nevertheless. She was able to minimize her tax burden and pay less out of her pocket because she claimed a loss. Now, if Donald Trump didn't do that, he would have failed in his fiduciary responsibility as CEO of that company. He would have failed all of his employees. He would have failed himself and his family for not seeking to pay as little as possible, which is something that everybody does. Whether it's a company or an individual, there isn't any person or entity out there at tax time that says to their accountant, make sure we pay as much as possible because we want to pay our fair share. I don't want to declare any losses. I don't want to write off any tax deductions. Never mind the charitable contributions. We don't need to tell the IRS about that. I want to pay as much as possible is something that nobody ever says. Nobody's ever said that, ever. Despite the way that Hillary is pontificating right now about Trump not paying his fair share. She didn't pay her fair share either, using that as an example. If she made deductions and declared losses and paid less than she would have had she not declared those losses. The New York Times, the ones who spilled this story, the ones who illegally and unlawfully acquired and published a portion of Donald Trump's tax returns, they've also used this law to their own advantage. In 2014, they declared over a $3 million tax return despite having $30 million in pre-tax profits. Anybody shocked and disgusted with the New York Times? 30 million in profit and you still needed to take a tax return? You still needed a tax refund? Really? And then you're going to publish a scathing article about Donald Trump using the tax laws to his advantage, which is what every business person in this country does. And any person or any business person that doesn't exploit the tax laws, they're going to be out of business quickly because the laws don't really work very well in your favor. Having said all of that, I want to appeal right now to all the independents and even the Democrats out there as to why you cannot trust Hillary Clinton to be your president. There's just no reason in the world for that to happen. I'm going to give you very specific reasons. I have notes in front of me. I'm going to read from them, and I'm going to talk to you about why Hillary Clinton should not ever be trusted to be president of the United States. First, she's bought by Wall Street. Bought and paid for. She likes to talk a good game about how Wall Street is fleecing the American people and how they don't pay their fair share, and what it's a wild west, in money laundering over there, or whatever it is that she says about Wall Street. You could be sure that she says something very different when she gives speeches to these Wall Street banks. They don't pay her millions of dollars so that she could stand on a podium in front of them and tear them a new asshole and tell them how she's going to rein them in and they're going to make less profit and some of them are going to go to jail if she becomes president. And you think they're going to invite her back to give another speech and pay her millions more? Of course not. She's telling them something completely different than what she's telling us. Now, everybody who wants to see Donald Trump's tax returns, how about demanding that Hillary release the transcripts of all her speeches to Wall Street? There's stuff in those transcripts that she doesn't want you to ever see. You can believe that. She's bought and paid for. Number two, she rigged the Democratic primary. I mean, I'm sure stuff like this has happened before, but this has got to be the first time that it's ever become public knowledge. They rigged the primary so that Bernie Sanders couldn't win. They literally strung him along like a little puppy dog chasing a treat on a string and made him think that maybe he had a chance at this when they really, from the very beginning, right from the get-go, they rigged it so that he couldn't win. She stole the primary. From all you Bernie Sanders supporters, she ripped you off. And now she wants your vote. She thinks that she's got your vote by default because she thinks you can't abandon ship and swim over to the good ship Republican. She thinks you can't, but you have to. You can't reward her for this. And the most brazen part of the whole thing is that Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigns in disgrace from this and isn't immediately hired to be part of Hillary's campaign. But no, there was nothing shady in all of that, was there? I doubt it. Number three, the Clinton Foundation. One great big money laundering scheme. It is a gigantic dark hole that money flows into and you never see it come out the other side. Nothing more needs to be said about that. I mean, here in New York, the Attorney General, our wonderful Democrat Attorney General, who is a big Hillary supporter, has done absolutely no investigating into the Clinton Foundation, but is not only investigating the Trump Foundation, has actually slapped them with a cease and desist and told them to stop raising money in the state of New York. Tell me that's something that couldn't have waited till after the election. Tell me that is not politically motivated. Eric Schneiderman is definitely in the can for Hillary Clinton. He's definitely part of her political machine. Number four, whether or not this pisses some people off or not, I'm going to say quite unequivocally, she is weak. She is frail. Just look at her. She can't make it to the car without collapsing and having to be picked up and carried inside. There's numerous reports coming out of her camp that she'll campaign for a couple of hours and then go home for a couple of days and stay in bed. That's not healthy. It is definitely not healthy. She most definitely does not have the strength or the stamina, and she is not up to the task of being president. You can't be president of the United States staying in bed all day long. Number 5, she will destroy what is left of our economy with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. What little is left of our jobs after NAFTA, it's going to go after TPP gets passed, and she's going to pass it. Number 6, mass migration of unvetted Syrians. Does this bother anyone else? She wants to bring in hundreds of thousands of people from a war-torn part of the world filled with jihadists who hate us and want to kill us, and she wants to bring them in with almost no background checking at all. On the trust system here, you're not jihadi, are you? No. Okay, you can come in. She doesn't really care about the safety of the American people. She wants future Democrats. She's also owned by many Middle Eastern countries who have contributed a significant amount of money into the Clinton Foundation. And I suspect that her unwavering support for bringing in hundreds of thousands of unvetted refugees is kind of her way of paying back the Saudis, because the Saudis don't want these refugees in their country. Don't worry. Hillary says, we'll take them in. And by the way, don't forget my check next month, made out to the Clinton Foundation, care of Hillary. Benghazi. The Benghazi hearings proved just how little empathy she has for the little people. People like you and I, people that work for her, people that are subordinate to her, people that depended upon her for their safety and well-being. How cavalierly she sat in front of the Benghazi committee and said, what difference does it make? I mean, this is a person who literally has the attitude, how dare you bother me with this bullshit? I'm Hillary. I mean, there's nothing presidential in that at all. Number 8. This may surprise you, but Hillary is a poor role model for women. She pretends to be a general in the war on women. She's right up front with her sword and her spear, fighting the war on women in the United States of America. Meanwhile, she has taken hundreds of millions of dollars in contributions from Saudi Arabia, from Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and how many other Middle Eastern countries that practice strict Sharia law. Countries like Saudi Arabia, where women are literally considered property of their husbands. First, they're property of their fathers until they're married off. Then they become property of their husbands. Women are not allowed to leave their homes without a male escort from their family. They cannot be seen anywhere in public with any part of their body uncovered, or they can be beaten in the street publicly by Sharia police. They're not allowed to leave the country unless they're escorted by a male relative. Not allowed to drive, not allowed to vote, not allowed to run for public office. Country like Saudi Arabia, where homosexuality is a crime punishable by death. And Hillary's a role model, huh? She's somebody who's really right up front there with women's issues and LGBT issues, while she rakes in hundreds of millions of dollars from countries that make women into slaves and kill homosexuals randomly, as ever they, with just the slightest whim and accusation. Number 9, she still won't own her vote for voting in favor of war in Iraq. She still makes excuses for it and pretends that it's somebody else's fault. Now, many people were in favor of the war in Iraq. But most people, unlike Hillary, did not have the benefit of having classified information placed on their desk. She was briefed, and she was given all the intelligence that everybody else in Congress was given. And based upon that intelligence, she made an educated decision to vote to go to war. And now she claims that it was all part of this right-wing conspiracy. She has to take ownership for her mistakes. And if voting for war in Iraq, if she feels is now a mistake, she has to simply say, I voted for it because at the time it seemed like the right thing to do. However, now I don't see it the same way. But she still can't do that. That's a lack of any kind of good moral compass right there. Lastly and not least, and I'm sure there are many other reasons, but I'm going to stop it here. Hillary Clinton uses black people for votes. She uses all minorities for votes, but specifically blacks. She comes around, just like Donald Trump says, every 4 years and promises the world. And she knows that your votes are already guaranteed. They're in her hip pocket. You're not going to jump ship. You're not going to leave the plantation. You're not going to go over to the Republican side. She's got your votes. She doesn't even have to really work for them. But she puts on a good dog and pony show and pretends to care when there's so many occurrences and examples of Hillary's blatant racism over the years that nobody really wants to talk about. But I guarantee, if she does win, she isn't going to fix a fucking thing in your community. So to all of you out there, Democrats, independents, never Trump Republicans, minorities, African Americans, Latin Americans, you got to vote for Trump. You cannot give this to Hillary Clinton. Don't be fooled and misled by the mainstream media into thinking that what Donald Trump said, whatever he said this week, that's offended anybody. Don't think that what he said is that much more worse than things that she has done. Hillary Clinton is a criminal. You've heard of the get out of jail free card. She has a never go to jail card. There are people in the highest levels of our government that are scared shitless of the Clintons. That's why she's not been indicted. Anybody else that did the shit that she's done would have been in jail already. Anybody else would have been indicted, imprisoned, locked up without a key. It goes to show you just how powerful the Clintons are. If people in the highest level of the FBI are afraid to indict her for something that they know is criminal. The only thing that's going to stop her is the people. You got to come out and vote on election day. You got to turn these polls around, and you have to give it to Donald Trump. Yes, he can be rude. He can be brash. He can be uncouth. But anybody who could take a $916 million loss, something that should have sunk his company, and turned it around and turned it back into a profitable enterprise, that is somebody we want working for us. So please, don't be fooled by this bullshit. Abandon Hillary Clinton. Don't vote for her. If you're polled, tell the polls you're voting for Donald Trump.